Hello, welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to show you how I use my brushes and which brushes I use for petals, leaves and stems. I hope you enjoy the video, and if you do, please give me a thumbs up, share it with your friends and subscribe. That's important for me because that helps my channel grow, and I'd really appreciate it if you could find time to do that. Here's my palette. It's titanium white, primary yellow, Naples yellow, raw sienna, raw umber, French ultramarine blue, sap green and alizarin crimson. I'm going to show you how I use this set of brushes to paint leaves, stems and petals. I'm using a liner brush, also called a rigger, from when they used to paint the rigging in old sailing ships. I'll also use a 3/4 inch flat and a 1/2 inch flat. These brushes are all Taklon brushes. I'll be using a round, a large and small round. I'll be using a Filbert brush, a large and a small Filbert. I don't know what the numbers are. They wore off a long time ago. I'll also be using my bristle fan brush. It's very old, about 30 years old. The ferrule is rusted. It's a bit beat up, but it does wonderful grasses and scrubby bits of ground. I'm actually going to show you how to paint a rose and some smaller flowers, and I'm using a liner brush to paint the stem first of all. And I'm using raw sienna. It probably won't show the raw sienna through the entire painting because I paint other colors over that to give highlights and shadow and just to strengthen it up. But this is how I sketch in all of my paintings, by using raw sienna and usually a liner brush. I'm using alizarin crimson to paint a base for my rose flower, and I'm using a flat brush to do that, a large flat, a 3/4 inch flat. Using alizarin and titanium white, I'm mixing a pale pink for my petals. I'm using a flat brush, a 3/4 inch flat brush, and each petal will have 2 strokes. I'm going to do 3 petals on the far side of the flower, pulling the petal in from the outer edge in toward the center. I'm changing to my 1/2 inch flat, and I'm going to put the petals on the far side of the flower, smaller petals on the far side of the flower, and there'll be 1 stroke each. And a slightly darker shade of pink I think I've got there. You see the full petal on the far side of the flower. As they come closer to you, you really only see the tops of the petals. So I'll be doing a sideways swipe to show the top of the petal. As you can see, my brush was too wet, and you need a fairly dry brush. I usually keep a pad of kitchen towel or even bathroom tissue below my easel and just wipe my brush off. I dip it into water and then wipe it off and then put it in the paint. And that ensures that I have only paint on my brush, not too much water, otherwise I get these drips. We see a little more of the lower petals, and as you saw, I pulled every one in from the outer edge in toward the center of the flower. And I'm using a sort of mid-tone pink. When you're painting with acrylics, you need to put something underneath. You need to sort of paint in glazes almost to get a soft flowery look. Now I'm putting on the highlight, and I'm using straight titanium white for this, and just putting it on the tips of the petals and not every single one. Some of these petals will be a little bit in shadow, so I will leave them the pink. But anything, I've decided that the light is coming from the right, so everything on the right will have a highlight on it. I'll put a link into washing and conditioning brushes, which is a video we did recently. One reason to condition your brushes is to keep the edge, especially on your flats, because if you use the flat side, you obviously get that long flat stroke. But if you turn it on its edge, you can get a thinner stroke, as you see in the swipe of the leaves that you don't see much of. But you can make it even thinner than that. Depends on how well your brush is conditioned, how sharp the edge is. I'm going to use this round and show you how I put in smaller flowers with a tipped edge, a petal tipped edge. Why am I saying petal tipped? A pointy tipped edge, that's a better word for it. I'm doing them in pink and I see you don't see it very well, so I'm going to change that in a minute to something white, I think. There we go. And you can see that's a different shape altogether, isn't it? And you get that with a round. You can get a really nice shaped petal if you go lightly on the tip and get that point, and then press the brush down at the heel and get that bell shaped at the bottom. Not all of mine are looking that way here, I must admit. Those are a little bit better. Painting is not only about mixing the right colours or putting on the shade and the highlight and tonal values and things like that. It's also about letting your brush do the work, and the shape of your brush is very important, and which brush you use to get which shape is very important. You need to let your brush do as much as it can for you. I've changed to a small brush, a small round. It will give me smaller petals, and but it's the same pointy brush and the same shape. I'm going to show you how I do leaves now, and I'm using a flat brush for this, a 3/4 inch flat, and I'm mixing sap green into that puddle, which includes pink and titanium white. The pink will bring the sap green down from its artificial brightness and soften it somewhat. I usually mix in either raw sienna or alizarin crimson into my greens, just to soften them slightly, make them not quite so brilliant, I suppose. I'm using a flat, as I do with most leaves, and I let the brush do the work again. It adds a sort of jagged edge as I do each stroke, and I pull it from the outer edge in toward the center vein. I know other people do leaves with a round. I just think they look more natural if you do them with a flat, but that's just the way I paint, and you may find something different. You have to experiment a lot to find your way, to find your vision and how to execute it. It's different for everyone. If you put in the hours, you will find the colors that appeal most to you, the brushes that you find easiest to work with, all those little things that make up a painting session. You will sort them all out eventually from everything that's out there, everything that's available, and there's tons of stuff out there. You will eventually get it all sorted and find what works best for you. It's a matter of time, I always think. Well, it's time and lots of experimentation. Well, here you can see I've used a liner brush to dot in the centers of those little flowers. I could just as easily have used a Q-tip, I often do. And I'm also strengthening the stems. And I'm not sure what color I'm using, but I suspect it might be French ultramarine blue. I like to get alizarin crimson and French ultramarine blue into my paintings. I feel it adds a little spark to them, a little depth to them, and richness. And you might find other colors. I also find the phthalo colors work well for that. They're so vibrant and they can make a painting pop. You can overdo it with the phthalo colors, I always think. And I think that's spelled P-H-T-A-L-O. But my teacher always called them phthalo colors. She was British too, so I don't know. I don't know what anyone really calls them. I'm going to use Naples yellow for a highlight. I call it my sunshine color because it looks great on tree trunks, stems, leaves, you name it. It's just a beautiful sunny color. It looks great for sand if you're painting a seascape. And it's one of my favorite colors. I usually add it later on in my painting, not at the very beginning. Sometimes you won't see it on my palette until I'm halfway through. But I highly recommend it as a great color for sunshine. Anyway, you want to dot a little brightness. Thorns alternate on either side of the stem. I usually only put 2 or 3 of those in. And when I'm painting roses, I like to paint fully open, full-blown, old-fashioned, antique, if you like, roses. They remind me of the roses that grew on the farm garden where I lived as a child. And I put in a dark center and then gradually get lighter, just a number of dots. I don't paint a solid color. I just sort of build it up with dots. I'm putting the sepals on the buds, and there are usually 5. And I start off with a darkish green and then add a highlight and shadow to that. Sometimes I add alizarin crimson to those as well. When you look at the sepals, they're quite often a little sort of wrinkled and dead looking, aren't they? And you get those browns and oranges, and you can really have fun with painting those. When I'm painting leaves, I usually put the shadow on before I put the highlight on. Not always, but most of the time. And I quite often use either French ultramarine blue or raw umber mixed with the sap green, and sometimes that can be hooker's green, which is also another nice color for leaves, and I use that as the shadow mixture. When I'm doing a highlight, I use the primary yellow and titanium white mixed into that same puddle of green, and that makes a really good highlight. As you add your shadows and highlights, the painting gathers more character and more body and interest. And what else does it get? It becomes more lively. It sort of jumps off the canvas to you. It makes you want to pick that rose. Okay, this is not strictly part of petals and leaves and stems, but I thought you'd find it interesting. I'm using this fan brush. It's made of bristle. It's 30 years old, beat up, really lovely to work with. And I'm doing grasses. I can use it flat to pull it up to do grasses, and then as I'm doing here, I can turn it on its edge and make taller shrubby type things. It's a really useful brush. I use it if I need to put in some stony ground, stony looking paths or anything like that. I just make it flat and scrabble it along, a bit like I'm doing here. And it's a fun brush to use. You can get a lot out of a fan brush, a bristle fan brush. Now you can get other Taklon and other softer fan brushes, but I don't find those, I was going to say useful, but I think the word is versatile. This brush is versatile. You can get so much out of it. You can see I'm using my finger here. An old teacher of mine used to say, you're not a real artist unless you get paint all over you. So get your hands in there. Flowering plants are fun in a painting, and you could do that with a fan brush as well. Just put colour on your brush and use it the same way that you would for the shrubs. It looks like, let's call it lupins. I don't know what they are really, but it looks interesting. In my paintings, the stems change quite a bit from the beginning. I put on several colours in the way of shadow and highlight and emphasis, something to make them stronger, something to make them brighter, something to throw them in shadow. I've always got a little work going on one part of the stem or another. And I basically use French ultramarine blue, alizarin crimson, raw umber, and sometimes primary yellow, and sometimes Naples yellow when I want a little sunshine on there. I completely forgot to show you how the Filbert brushes work. These have a rounded edge at the top, and they make a rounded petal or a rounded leaf, whatever it is you want to put on that is rounded and not pointed. So I'm putting these little flowers in the bottom here, and they really don't make much sense, but they do show you how the Filbert brush works. I am pulling that petal in from the outer edge to the center still, even with this brush. The petal size will depend on the size of the brush that you choose. So these are all important considerations when you're painting. I don't always get it right when it comes to proportion in a painting. I sometimes will make a vase larger than it needs to be, but I'm not Vincent van Gogh, so I think I can just have fun. Painting for me is all about having fun and coming out at the end of it with something that pleases me. And if it doesn't please me, I paint over it and use that board again. Well, that's it for petals, leaves and stems, and you've got little grass and scrubby ground in there as well as a couple of shrubs. So I feel I did well on this painting. I don't think it would win any prizes, but I was happy to do it. I enjoyed doing it. And I hope you enjoyed the video too. And if you did, please remember to give me a like, share and subscribe. So important to me. And I'll be back with another painting soon. I'm not sure what it'll be. I have to think about it. So bye for now, and I'll see you next time.